G'day, Ancient Mahari here. A little bit more on the quiet borderline because I'm hearing from a lot of clients, getting comments to the channel, emails, etc. People either think that people with quiet BPD have like, quote, BPD light, unquote, or conversely, on the opposite end of the scale, people think, well, that quiet borderline is definitely a vulnerable narcissist. And neither is correct, neither is true. Some people with BPD can be comorbid with NPD, but that's not everybody. So that's not every quiet borderline. So quiet BPD is not a new title for vulnerable narcissist. The other thing is, people with quiet BPD, oh, and quiet BPD, let's add in quiet BPD high functioning. Well, this is not coded language for, so they really kind of almost don't have BPD, you know? This is the kind of thing I'm hearing from people. People seem really confused. And can't blame people for being really confused about all the crazy and misinformation out there. Crazy information and misinformation out there. But the bottom line is, some people with BPD aren't as severely impacted as others, but I personally don't believe there's anything called BPD light. There are people that do have traits of BPD. Some people call them tendencies. I don't know what that means. But here's the thing. People are you one of those people torturing yourself on the other side of a quiet borderline, high functioning, that you either think is a vulnerable narcissist or you think is less of a borderline because, well, they don't bite with you the same. And, well, I've had people say to me, but like, he or she was quiet and I thought maybe that we could get along better because, well, at least they wouldn't be yelling at me. And then in the meantime, there's so many people out there talking about feeling next to, I don't know what, driven crazy by the silent treatment, by the quiet of the quiet borderline, by the withdrawal. See, quiet BPD is the subtype by Theodore Million, who made a lot more sense than a lot of American psychiatry does, when he coined that subtype as discouraged. But they internalize everything. So it's not BPD light. You know, you can't, it's not a measuring stick for that, right? Quiet BPD high functioning often means people who have quiet BPD aren't that recognizable, right? Which can be a problem for people that end up in relationships with them, granted. And that can be really shocking when you start to figure out what's going on. Or like in my case with my last ex, partner X, who was a quiet BPD, I didn't even figure it out. Because I wasn't having a codependent response. I wasn't pursuing. I was busy. We were in a relationship. It was what it was. I mean, it's been horrible ever since she took her life. But the thing is, I knew it had to end, but like, I was a little bit oblivious. And when we could get along and we're together, that was seemingly really good, right? But that's the cycle. It's either really good, or with the quiet borderline, you can't even find them. Or they won't text you back. They won't call you. Drives you crazy. I'm not here to judge anybody if you're feeling like they're driving you crazy. Or you're on your last nerve because you just don't get this. But people have said to me over and over, many people, emails, clients, etc. But you know, if I didn't say this, or if I did say that, or if I'd have said yes to this instead of no to that, that had to be my fault, right? That the person with quiet BPD just like ghosted me or doesn't text me anymore, or it's been months or a long time even for some people and they're still really totally focused on this. And understandable because it's difficult, confusing, and painful and no closure. But also, this is what more severe codependency looks like for people. Not all people, but a lot of people. It's like you can't get them off your mind and you keep blaming yourself and it had to be your fault. But it's not your fault. See, people with impacted more severely with codependency, who've been with a quiet borderline, high functioning, whatever, internalizing, they're still every bit a borderline. They still have borderline personality and what that really means. And yes, it's a response to adverse childhood experiences, I'm always saying. But it also means that they will not be able to love you. They will not be able to attach to you. They don't know who they are. So it's just a different manifestation that people equate with, well, they're not so BPD then. It's different. For classic acting out borderlines or quiet borderlines, it's different for each individual, how impacted they are or not. But I got a question recently from a client. Well, does the quiet borderline split too? Because what they said to me was, I read a lot on, those websites out there where everybody and their mother's dog is answering questions now. And they're often not accurate information that these people are giving, right? So this concept, because I've read a lot on, whatever the site, and people with BPD are writing over there and they're saying, well, but like I have quiet BPD, so I don't split on anybody else. What? See, lots of people that are BPD, they're all in different places, and high percentage of them are still, they might be undiagnosed, they might be diagnosed, they might know, they might be in denial, they're not in treatment. The quiet borderline, the difficulty, the aspects of the difference with all of what that is, but it is still borderline personality, first and foremostly. And like I said, it doesn't mean ergo ipso facto they're vulnerable narcissists. I don't know. People in their codependency are drowning in reading endlessly the most speculative, unreliable information, and probably listening to some on YouTube too. But these sites where everybody's writing all this stuff. So people with BPD on a couple of sites where all these people do all this writing say, well, I have quiet BPD, so I don't split on anybody else. So somehow that means they're what, better than the acting out borderline? No, they're having the same experience in life as the acting out borderline. They have the same lack of self, the same inability to attach, the same inability to love, the same relational difficulties that borderline personality presents for not only people with it, but anybody around them trying to relate to them. So when a quiet borderline writes online somewhere, but I don't split on anybody else, I split on myself, shake your head. Ugh, what? And realize that can't be accurate, because they feel like they're splitting on themselves because they're internalizing it and experiencing it. But splits don't happen until triggers happen. And where do triggers come from? Well, I'm not saying somebody with BPD couldn't sit around and think of something and then get triggered by that and be emotionally dysregulated, quiet, or acting out. But triggers come from, well, no, they don't come from other people, but triggers are perceived as coming from other people. So people with BPD get less triggered when they're alone, even if they have quiet BPD, if triggered at all. It could be triggered by a movie, triggered by a TV show. I don't trigger by a video. Somebody in a really nice way on the channel today left a comment who has BPD, and they seem to be working through things by the second comment. I mean, like by the second comment, it became evident that they're working on themselves. The first thing was, they thought a lot of what I said in a certain video was not the information was good. Oh, it's just the darn title was horrible, don't you know? So they said the title was way too much. I think it was my video I did a few years ago. It's on my community page right now, so I want to remind people I'm flipping up older videos. So on the community page, go to my channel, hit community. You can scroll down and find some videos you might not have found yet, because I'm buried under the algorithm. Always have been, always will be. That's life, that's fine. That video was borderline, I think it was borderline love is not love at all. And so the person said, that title's really too much. That title is just... And then there's the people who say, because I use the word borderline in a title, I'm stigmatizing. No, you can only fit so much on a thumbnail, you know? So, but the thing is, people with quiet BPD are not vulnerable narcissists, and they're not less BPD. Some might not be as severely impacted as others. It's like the acting out borderline. So I said that already, just wanted to reemphasize. So where are codependents getting into trouble with this immensely in their lives? First of all, it's hard to know that you're with somebody with quiet BPD, right? Until you start to figure some stuff out. And that's painful. It doesn't make him a vulnerable narcissist, though. And on the other side of that is the reality that people with codependency and a high degree of SAD, because not everybody with codependency is the same or in the same place either. No monolithic groups of labels out here that fit all people in said label, which I really think we need to look at more humanistically with a human context. But the point is, people with a certain amount to a severe amount of codependency will always attribute, are continually attributing to themselves that they got ghosted or the relationship couldn't work out because of something they did. It has to be their fault. And guess what a lot of these people have in common? And this might be true for you or it might not be. They have a cluster B parent. They have a borderline or a BPD, NPD comorbid parent. Like I have a mother like that. No contact and all, like, you know, years ago. But so the woundedness in childhood, that is the roots of codependency, is directly connected to your pursuit and you're blaming yourself endlessly ad infinitum, constantly focused on even maybe weeks, months, and for some people a year or more later. Well, if I'd have said this instead of that, wouldn't that quiet BPD still be with me then? Would they have still ghosted me then? And I've said this many different ways, right? But it bears repeating. It's not your fault. And then there's the inevitable comparisons between, and you might be doing this. Well, their last relationship was a year long. And the relationship before that, they said, was a year and a half long. And maybe they had another relationship that was 8 months long. I got ghosted in 3 weeks. I got ghosted, people say, I got ghosted in 3 months. I got ghosted in 5 months. I got ghosted in 6 months. How come they could relate better, as if that means they related better to exes, than me, people will say. Or, so there's that side of the what-ifing and the questioning and the, that's just people with codependency, kind of like an ostrich, you know. I don't know if they actually do this, but whatever. Digging a deeper hole to stick their head in, too, right? You're hurting yourself. And that comes from somewhere in your childhood and something in your inner emotional landscape where you have woundedness that is in your subconscious still that you need to get into a healing recovery process to deal with. Because the no closure with the quiet borderline, that you're forever, and maybe you're one of those people right now, forever holding yourself on the hook that it's your fault, and you can't seem to get away from all those thoughts and their thought distortions, and it's not logical, but it hurts. You didn't cause it. And how long the relationship was with the last ex or somebody else before has no meaning whatsoever. The other thing that was put to me recently by a client was, well, but you know, I see these people out there, they say they got BPD and they're happily married and they've been married for 30 years, 20 years, 25 years, 40 years. Well, what does that mean? Some people will get treatment therapy and very small percentage of relationships will work better. A lot of people with BPD and codependency will stay together and it's no fun and it's not a healthy relationship. And on the other side of that, when the quiet BPD's ghosted you and you think it's your fault when it's not your fault. Because only if I would have said this or not done that, the woulda, coulda, only, the if onlys, the shoulda, shoulda, wouldn't, have, couldn't, I wish I didn't, but I didn't. You were in an impossible situation and you need to help yourself out of these thought loops now. So the thing is, on the other side of that is, so they're just going to be happy with the next person, right? Like the next person, they're going to be like with a year or 5 years, or they'll be like some of these people I've been reading about on these, quote sites, whatever, that they'll be together for 20 years with somebody and I'll miss out on all the good stuff. This is just not logical thinking. I want to reassure you today. People with BPD don't go from one relationship where they ghost to another and all of a sudden what? They're not BPD anymore? They're going to be relationally, averagely, mentally healthy? No, not at all, let me assure you. So, just a little bit more about the quiet BPD and the thought distortions, the cognitive distortions, the mind traps, the woulda, coulda, shoulda, if only I didn't this, if only I had done that. The codependent's endless need, yes, you heard me right, need to blame and hurt self and focus on that quiet BPD that ghosted you because, why? Because codependents externalize out stuff, create drama and more pain for themselves, hold other people's feelings as more important than their own, overgive, rescue, etc., but can't get people off their mind after being ghosted, even after a long time that you could be spending focusing on yourself and healing your codependency and getting closure in a healing and recovery journey, which I help clients with, instead of focusing endlessly on the quiet BPD or the high-functioning quiet BPD that people either think is a vulnerable narcissist or kind of doesn't really have BPD at all, really, because, it must be BPD light, and neither is true. The answer for you today is that you need to focus on yourself. And it isn't going to be easy and it isn't going to feel possible, and you got to make that difficult choice. So the quiet borderline, the discouraged type, is getting more stigmatized by the day by all this stuff. And don't feel guilty about that if you're a codependent. Because you know who's stigmatizing the quiet borderline the most right now? Yeah, the people with quiet BPD writing online things like, I only split on myself, I don't split on anybody else. People that are misrepresenting their relationships as happy, like even if they're long-term, unlikely unless they get significant treatment. So if you're a codependent today and you've been ghosted by a quiet BPD and you're wondering about all this stuff, well, if you'd like to work with me, I'm out here. I could help you with that. But the number one thing you need to do today is stop that focus. Minute by minute by minute. And I had a client recently who said that another person that they were working with, another psychologist recommended to them that they get a couple of books on BPD. Kind of the trendiest, latest couple of books. And I said to them, well, those are great books, but I think you'd be better off reading a book about codependency. So where's your focus today? And what's up with all this confusion about the quiet BPD? And why do people think when you read these websites and or listen to some YouTubers, when they describe quiet BPD, I don't split on anybody but myself, it's not true. You're getting fed misinformation and it adds to confusion. I hope that was helpful to somebody today. Take care.